Hi everybody, Dan Barman here, coming to you live from the Dan Barman School of Drumming in Brooklyn, New York. Thank you all so much for joining me today for my first episode of the Drumming 101 video series. Starting in July of 2013, every month for a year, I'm going to be releasing a short video covering topics geared toward beginning drummers so that they can get a little bit of extra information that isn't normally covered in private lessons. That way all you beginners out there can hit the ground running and get started with your playing. So today we're going to be covering the basics of how to set up a drum set. In a future video, I'm going to be going more in depth and we're going to talk about how to set up a drum set ergonomically so that it matches your particular body and works with the flow of your specific movements. But today we're really just going to cover the basics. I'm going to go over some of the working parts of the drum set that you're going to need to know in order to get it set up so that you can start playing. So without any further ado, let's get started. So here we have our blank canvas. We're going to get started today with what may be the most important component of setting up the drum set, the drum throne. Most drum thrones are made more or less alike. You have a padded seat sitting on top of a vertically adjustable post. Some posts adjust with a screwing mechanism, and others adjust with a peg in a hole system. The one I have screws up and down, and then there's a locking component here at the bottom that goes ahead and locks the height into place. I recommend starting at a height where your legs are flat with your knees or higher. Keep in mind the higher that you sit, the further back your feet will naturally want to be to your body. So the higher we sit, the closer our drum set is going to be able to come. And here we have our foot pedals. The hi-hat pedal on the left, the kick drum pedal on the right. And as you can see, I've really just put the footboards directly underneath where my feet have already naturally landed. I have in my hand here the top half of the hi-hat pedal so that we can take a look at how this works. So basically what we have here is a hollow pole and a hollow pole on the bottom, and this piece in the middle screws in to a receiving piece here in the bottom. So that just goes right in there. We screw it in, and then once that's nice and tight, over that goes the top half of the hi-hat stand. It just slips right on, and then this is height adjustable. There'll be a wing nut about halfway up, and you can tighten that once you get your hi-hat stand to the desired height. Now it's important to keep in mind that this piece here, that's where the bottom of your hi-hats are going to sit, and you're going to be able to adjust this a little bit once we get the rest of the kit set up. But that's how we get started. And of course, over this center pole goes the hi-hat clutch. That just slips right on over. That holds the top of the two hi-hats, and you can place this wherever you'd like it to be on the pole, depending on how far apart you want your hats, and it just tightens right there like that. Ah, the bass drum. So when setting up the bass drum, there's really just two things you need to keep in mind: attaching the kick pedal and the telescoping side legs. Let's take a closer look. So what we have here is a good example of a modern bass drum leg or bass drum spur. And some bass drum legs have the ability to swivel into an up and back position like this one currently is in, so that it can hide away for storage and easy portability. This is probably how your bass drum leg will come when you first bring the bass drum home. And the way that we bring this down into position is we simply loosen the mechanism here, and the leg swivels forward, and we do that until we see that the memory locking system of the leg shows you that it's in the full forward position, and then we just go ahead and tighten this leg back down so that it no longer swivels. Most bass drum legs will also have the ability to have their length adjusted. This one does that by way of a telescoping leg, and there's a second adjustment area here. So if we want our leg to be longer or shorter, we simply just loosen this guy here, and the leg will telescope down or up. We get it into the desired length so that it matches the one on the other side, and we go ahead and tighten that down there. Some bass drum legs also on the bottom will have these little spikes here, and some are able to be converted so that the spike hides away in case you're playing on a wood floor or something like that. You don't want to scratch the floor. You'd rather have the rubber tip down instead of the metal spike. This one adjusts by pulling the foot down and then giving it a twist to one side or the other, and then that spur will hide away. Some adjustments vary from company to company, but in general, this is the way that most bass drum spurs will work. And here we have the kick pedal, which is pretty simple to attach to the rim of the bass drum, and all pedals more or less have the same features when it comes to attaching it to the kick drum. You've got this clamp that sits on the front underside of the pedal, and there'll be some sort of adjustment piece here that will open and close that clamp. So once you have it in the open position, you just slip it onto the rim so that the top of the clamp is on top and the base of the foot pedal runs underneath, and then you just go ahead and turn the dial to tighten it down. And you don't want to over tighten it, but you just want it tight enough so that it stays on. And of course, now we have the snare drum. So most snare stands are essentially made the same way. You've got a three-pronged basket that sits on top of a height telescoping body. Now all of your hardware is essentially going to work the same, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You've got a wing nut that you tighten or loosen, and when it's loose, you can bring your stand up or down to the desired height, you tighten it, and it clamps down. So the snare basket may come folded up like this. These hands just sort of open up automatically. There is a mechanism that sits on the bottom here that will tighten or loosen, and you can adjust how much or how little this basket opens. So you're going to want to start by having it open a little bit bigger than your drum, and I've got a 14-inch snare drum here. And you want to set it up so that none of these rubber tipped hands, none of these clamping parts of the basket are grabbing your snare gate, right? The snare gate's that little part of your hoop that allows the snare wires to come through. So essentially all we're saying here is that you don't want the part of the drum that carries the snare wires to intersect with any of these little rubber feet on the basket. And once you have your snare drum where you like it, you just grab that part underneath the basket that I showed you before. You give it a couple of tweaks until it's nice and tight. And then from there, you can grab the drum and turn it any which way you like. Now also on the snare basket, and you'll also find on your cymbal stands, there's going to be a mechanism just underneath the drum so that you can loosen and adjust the tilt of the drum. I can tilt it more toward me, more away from me, side to side, etc., etc. I recommend starting with your drum more or less flat. All you really need to know is that when your hand intersects the drum, you don't want the wrist bent in any sort of extreme way. It should be as natural as possible. And now we have a rack tom and we have a floor tom. Chances are your floor tom has 3 legs, and each of those legs is going to be attached to the drum by one of these side brackets here. Now on each of the brackets you should have a wing nut that will tighten or loosen the bracket around the leg. What you're going to do is, when the bracket's loose, you're just going to take the top of that leg, you're going to feed it in through the bottom of the bracket, and once you have that leg at the desired length that you want, bringing the drum to the desired height, you just go ahead and tighten that bracket down around the leg. You'll do that for all 3 legs. This particular drum doesn't have a wing nut around its bracket because it's a vintage drum. So it uses a little bit of a different mechanism in order to set the length of the legs, but the concept is pretty much the same. Now if you don't have legs on your floor tom, you're going to have what we call a mounted floor tom. And that's going to work in a very similar way to this rack tom. Now on your drum set, you might have a post coming out of your bass drum. That post is going to be vertically adjustable, and attached to it will be a tom holder of some sort, which probably has another little post which will go into the bracket of your rack tom. My drum set, the way I like to set it up, instead of posting it through the bass drum, I have it set up attached to a cymbal stand. And if your floor tom is a mounted floor tom, it's going to also work that way. It'll be attached to a cymbal stand or something of that nature. So the way this works is each rack tom will have a bracket that looks like this. Now, it may actually be drilled into the shell of the drum itself, and that's fine, but it essentially works the same way. You take this little space in the bracket, and it's going to go around whatever little post your particular brand of drum set provides. you're just going to go ahead and slip that guy right on over the top, and you can get it to whatever height you desire, and then you're just going to use the wing nut to tighten it down. Now, some drum sets hardware are slightly different, but they all are basically the same concept. In addition to what I've shown you here, you will either have a ball in socket or a ratchet mechanism that will adjust the amount of tilt that your drums have. And now we've got the icing on the cake, the cymbals. Now you may have a couple different types of cymbal stands. Of course, you've got your hi-hat stand. You have what we call your boom stand, which is a cymbal stand that has an extension arm like this one here and like this one here. And then you've got what we call your straight stand, which is this one here, which is essentially a cymbal stand without the boom arm. Some boom stands are made to be both a straight or a boom stand. And all that means is that this piece that extends, if you loosen the wing nut and adjust the tilt, this piece will actually hide inside the hollow center of your cymbal stand. So you get some great options there. Now just to show you quickly how these cymbals work, the hi-hat stand, you've got your top and your bottom hat. You just take your bottom hi-hat and you set that on top of that padded plate just like that. That's it. It just sits there. Now there may be a little screw under there that will be used to adjust the tilt of this bottom piece, and you can do that in whatever way you so desire. If you're going to tilt it, I recommend you have it tilted slightly towards you. Now the way this clutch works is you just unscrew the bottom piece from the clutch. You take out one of the two different felts so that what you have is the top of the clutch with one felt. You put that over the top of the hi-hat cymbal, you turn it upside down, you put the second felt back on, you take the bottom of the clutch and you just put it back together. And it's really as simple as that. This clutch goes over the center post, and you can either use the foot pedal or your hands to adjust how much distance you want between the two cymbals when your foot is not on the pedal. So keep in mind that sometimes this bottom piece of the clutch will come loose while you're playing from natural vibrations. So make sure that if you have a situation where your hi-hat doesn't seem to be working properly, which looks like that when your clutch pulls through, chances are you've got that bottom piece of your hi-hat clutch rattling around in between the two hi-hats. That's a common mistake that some beginners will make. So make sure you check that out. I'm just going to go ahead and put this back together properly. My two felts are on. I get the bottom of the clutch nice and tight, and I just throw it over the center post and tighten it down. And now I've got a working hi-hat. The other cymbal stands are pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to attach my crash cymbal here. You just take the top wing nut off, take off one of the two felts, put the cymbal on top of the bottom felt, the top felt goes on, and you screw the wing nut back on. Now, something to also take a look at is that on most cymbal stands, you're going to have this little plastic piece that looks sort of like a T. Okay, so this sits on top of the cymbal stand, and it essentially creates a base for the cymbal, or rather the bottom felt, to rest on, and then your cymbal goes on top of that. Those will wear through after some time, so if you start hearing like your cymbal is rattling on your cymbal stand, go ahead and check out that plastic piece because it may have worn through. So I'll quickly just go ahead and add these last two cymbals on so that you can see the whole thing all set up, but essentially we're done. And now it's really just about getting the cymbals to be placed in a position where they are easy to play, and really all that means is that you don't want to have to reach too far to hit any of the cymbals. With your sticks in your hand, you should essentially be able to reach each cymbal without extending your arm too much. And the most important ones are going to be the ride cymbal here and the hi-hat cymbal over there. You want to be able to hit your ride without having to extend your arm or lift your arm too high up because you don't want your shoulder and neck to get tired. It should be nice and easy. And the hi-hat you should be able to reach simply by crossing your right hand over your left hand. If you find that your elbow is intersecting in with your body, right, your right elbow is coming into your body, you know that your hi-hat is way too far over. You really want to be able to just sit as natural as possible. All right, and that is how we set up our drum set. So I hope that this has been helpful for all of you guys out there, all of you beginning students or all of you mothers and fathers of beginning students who may have used this video to set up their child's first drum kit. Be sure and check in with me often at danbarman.com. If you want any more information on lessons, you can reach me through that website. And also check in with me every month. I'll be posting a new video each month on a topic suitable for beginners. Thanks again, everybody, and I hope to see you next time.